I'm really excited to bring on our next presenter. His name's Jonathan Raduns. He's the principal of a really cool company, Merchandise Food, where they specialize in hospitality, resort, cafe, those grab-and-go markets. And he's really an expert in the merchandising area. And he's worked with really cool companies, the Hilton, Marriott. He's worked with a lot of airports. He's really going to give a great insight into how to best present a product on the shelf and really how to work with these kind of companies. And it's a question that I get a lot, and I think a lot of people are really going to get a lot of benefit out of it. So I really appreciate your time, Jonathan. Thank you so much for helping us.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So just to get started, what are the advantages of merchandising and bringing a product to these hotels and grab-and-go food markets?
Well, for starters, it meets the needs of the traveling guest, which has changed quite a bit over the last few years. So beyond that, the operator has an opportunity to profit in areas that maybe they haven't previously, where hotels and resorts have often had sit-down restaurants or in-room service for food. They're now finding that there's other opportunities to benefit as guests are changing what their expectations are. So a lot of the grab-and-go foods, packaged snacks, and other candies or different things that might be interesting to find in a little market are now being placed off lobby in some quick types of very diverse marketplaces that hotels are coming up with brand by brand to align with their goals.
Now, what would you say is the most unusual thing that kind of sells the best that you've seen in these kind of grab-and-go markets?
What's interesting is that I think brand by brand, the hospitality groups are really trying to custom curate a mix that makes sense with what their guests are looking for, particularly in a lot of the lifestyle brands. So they'll be very intentional about what they put there. And one of the, I don't know if it's really crazy or anything, but one of the funny components are just a lot of the little local candies and things, like a lot of the local items that small producers are making in that area. And as you have more and more foodies moving about, traveling for business or pleasure, they're looking for fun things that maybe they couldn't find somewhere else. And because it's unique, it's giving them a reason to make a purchase.
That's a great point. So if I had a local food, I should really kind of consider tapping into the hospitality sources around me to have that as a retail source.
Yeah, I would say if the product was well labeled, if it was an established item and it appealed to a broad market, I think it would make sense to call on some of the food and beverage directors at a particular hotel. Obviously larger hotels would have more throughput and volume to purchase them.
That's
but
interesting.
That would be a place where they could maybe gain some business that they hadn't thought of.
That's a great tip. One of our member questions was, how do I begin to understand, merchandising and distribution, in these retailers? Because, it's such a unique angle.
Well, I think the industry is changing quite a bit right now. Traditionally, food service distributors would be backing up to the loading dock near the kitchen to serve food and beverage at a hotel. And a lot of the offerings that are currently available through those distribution systems don't entirely align to retail grab-and-go products, or they may not have the same items consistently day to day on their product mix, or be out of stocks on them. So currently, smaller distributors that maybe focus on local items or that could bring items directly into the space itself would be a big advantage to food and beverage teams looking to do something unique and keep things stocked. Additionally, any distributors that offer other services like placement of products or a little bit of support merchandising are also highly regarded. Traditionally, it's the hospitality groups taking the risk on and making a purchase for an item, but other things like guaranteed sales on certain items would be very helpful as well. And I think just even meeting with hospitality groups to help them broaden and expand the way that they're looking at what they're placing in these locations could be helpful, because sometimes the individuals that are managing these facilities don't have a strong retail background. And they would hesitate to add additional products to their mix because it becomes more cumbersome. It's more orders to place and things like that. So any support that someone could bring to getting items where they need to be at a good price that they can be profitable on is usually a good help to them.
Okay, so come with the solution, when you present the opportunity.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Because that really brings me to my next question. What are the biggest mistakes, businesses make when kind of bringing a product and putting it into these kind of locations, as far as merchandising?
Well, I think some of it has to do with just the product itself. Like, is it a good fit? Am I offering products that are maybe single serve, in a great looking package? Is the product have a UPC label on it? Like, is it functional? Can I help them get the product set up and through the system and order it easily? Okay. A lot of times, coaching on where to place the products or complementary products could be helpful as well. Like these go really well next to the hot beverages. If it's a packaged pastry item or something like that, like giving some coaching on that would be useful, and also help the vendor as well to gain the uplift in sales, because it's at a place where people might, impulsively grab and purchase them. So. Right.
That's a good point. Really thinking about where your product best performs in the store and kind of delivering that information when you're making your pitch. And I think a lot of people struggle with, when they get that, how do you expand the merchandising opportunities? What's the point of sale display, really designed for? How can I best present my product?
Well, I think a display or a fixture or a little impulse unit at the register really needs to highlight the product. So many are often highlighting the brand itself.
Okay.
Or having visual distractions in the design of the fixture or unit that limit view of the product. And a lot of times it's the product itself, or the tantalizing food that you're presenting is really what people are buying.
Right.
So if it's hidden at all in that unit, because it's setting down below, a barrier or something like that, it really limits that opportunity. And beyond that, one of the biggest hindrances I see is just simply having enough. Like oftentimes the register area is just void of an impulse unit, or the store itself has a disproportionate amount of seating or just open areas compared to actual for sale products, which puts a big limit on sales in and of itself.
That's interesting. So maybe bringing them that point of sale display, and as you said, with complementary products, that might be an opportunity.
Sure, and I think in most brands, anything from full service up to luxury hotels, they will require that the fixture or unit be aligned with their brand. It's going to be very important to them how things look and feel. Hospitality groups are very intentional about millwork, design elements, and they're working with interior designers to make that space look and feel just right. So they're certainly not going to want a corrugated, shipper sitting next to the front lobby. But at the same time, in some metro settings, it might be worth a a wholesaler's investment to bring in a metro rack or work with the group to build a fixture that makes sense.
Okay. It's interesting because one of our next members' questions was, what is it that makes that point of sale display most effective? Because you mentioned, broadcasting and, showing the product. But as far as where you place it in the store, how do you test that? It's so expensive when you make these. How do you really test before you invest?
Well, I think from our perspective, the industry standard would be simply placing them at register areas where people are transacting, and then also in the spaces in the queue. I mean, so often there's a long line that may form in the morning to purchase a coffee. Or a bagel or something like that. And so placing them within arm's reach in logical locations would be a good starting point. And for most operators I see, that's probably just a fundamental thing that could be implemented right away.
Okay. So just that grab and go impulse items right by the register, where the line forms.
Right. Yeah. I mean, strategically placing products where people are makes the most amount of sense, I think. So.
Okay. And so what would be the advantages, of having that, on the counter as opposed to, maybe like a freestanding one in line. What kind of a difference in sales can that make?
I think it could be substantial. We've seen average guest checks uptick probably 4 to 14% overnight with added additional products in queues and at the registers, because people are, they've got their wallet out. It's that last minute decision point before the transaction takes place. And they can just say, oh, maybe I'll get this for the road. So having the right items there make a lot of sense. I mean, even if there's not refrigeration, ambient water, mints, candy, you think about some of the major national coffee brands and the types of things that they put there. And I think many times there's great examples to follow, whether it's a grocery store or those examples that are already kind of dialed into the types of items that make the most sense there.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes copying is the best flattery, right? Because others have invested the efforts in the research. So
so they've really kind of honed in exactly what kind of a selection you need, for that area. But a big question that we see a lot is really, how to get in front of the right person. When you call a hotel, you're going to get the front desk person. They're not going to know. So are there any events? Is that what your company does? How do you get in front of the right person?
To sell them a product?
Right, to present your product.
Well, it's interesting because generally speaking, there's a bit of autonomy at the site level for many of the hospitality groups.
That's
a food and beverage director is often able to make site level decisions. There's often a brand standard or national mix that might be a baseline that's expected. But for things outside of that, the food and beverage director or manager of the site is typically a strong starting point.
Okay.
They may possibly delegate down to an assistant manager, but generally speaking, the terms are very similar that you would search for the title, and they would have decision-making authority for that type of thing.
Well, so you just go to that person, you present the opportunity, and you can really hustle on foot that way.
Sure. I do think that they'd be apt to, in the midst of catering operations and day-to-day food and beverage challenges, it would make sense to schedule an appointment if at all possible. I think dialing in on the opportunity, how they could expand opportunity within a certain product mix or offering that you have that could meet guest needs, and speaking to those points could help you obtain an appointment. That's
a great point. What kind of mistakes do you see on your end that a lot of people make when presenting this kind of an opportunity or bringing a product to these grab and go markets?
Well, I think as I mentioned before, the mix that you're presenting or solution you're presenting really needs to be able to meet the needs of the space. And the guest is looking to have quick fix solutions for on-the-go food, convenience, personal care, health and beauty products that they maybe have forgotten, electronic emergencies, or I forgot my charger, things like that. And a lot of the groups don't actually think about some of those secondary items that are, there are some companies that do, but others, they wouldn't even know where to go about getting them. So if you can present them to a food and beverage director or a site level employee that's able to make decisions, dialing into those items that solve the guest needs, that are packaged in a usable size. I mean, clearly really large beverages or liquids or things can't be taken with a guest who's hopping on an airplane, or it's impractical to carry around all day. So it's really just making sure that the person has done some preliminary work and thinking through what would make sense for the clientele.
Okay. That makes sense. And you hit on a really good point before where you were talking about the brand. If you're selling into a Ritz-Carlton,
right,
you want to make sure that it fits their brand personality.
Right, exactly. So sweets or crackers or snacks that are really more of national brand, maybe, or a generic product, or something that's not unique or upper scale. Usually the reason hotels have so many different brands is that they're appealing to particular lifestyles and affluency levels and guest demographics. And those often come hand in hand with expectations for the healthfulness, the ingredients inside of a product, the level of luxury in a food or snack. And so making sure that whatever you're presenting aligns with the brand. And clearly you could do research online to see what the brand represents, or just a scouting trip to the space prior to could help you understand the types of things that they might be looking to and be receptive to.
I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people make, is that they just don't walk into the store before they start selling to them, to check out what's there already.
Yes. One other quick topic would be sometimes there's items offered around behind the counter or in a drawer or a cabinet that maybe aren't presented in a straightforward way.
Okay.
They're available, but they're not the items that a guest might want to see when they enter the space, but they might want them available. So if the item's working against the look and feel of the space on the shelf,
okay,
or what the store's trying to communicate at the brand or brand level, there may still be opportunities to sell products that aren't visible.
Understood. All right, and to wrap up, what is the best thing that you could share with a business owner or a retail buyer, to prepare their business for success, moving forward this year?
Well, I think examining the product mix in general and determining whether it's a bit stale, if it's infused with some of the new trends and products that people are looking for these days. Even food items are changing what people are looking for. Fads come in and out. And so beyond that, one thing I found that often very much limits groups is the amount of products they offer.
Okay.
Making assumptions that a small product mix is going to meet the needs of everyone really often is tied to the complexity of just adding some additional items, which may seem overwhelming, but I found there's a good incremental return by expanding the mix a bit, which can be done even incrementally so that it's something you can wrap your brain around and get in a rhythm with. But just adding more items can often increase a lot of opportunity.
Okay, that's a great piece of advice. I think that really this is such a crazy market where there's a huge opportunity, and it's got the ability where a small business can really enter in at a reasonable level. So I appreciate you shedding some light on the entire industry for us.
Thanks. You're very welcome.
All right.
Pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Have a great day.